Alicia, what do you look for specifically when hiring a virtual assistant or assistant period? Because
Yeah.
I can only imagine that, and you are the type, you know what you want and you know exactly what you're looking for and you can filter that out. So what is that?
Yeah. And let me preface this out. I don't get it right every time. Sometimes you think you've got everything pinned down and you know what you're looking for, and then you find the person and then it doesn't work out. That's okay. Don't beat yourself up about that. Use that as a learning experience and then say, what do I need to adjust for next time? But it really comes back to, and again, what I'm about to say is not new here, right? Hire for attitude, teach for skill. Attitude is everything. If you've got someone with the same values aligned to your organization, the right attitude in terms of their approach to their work, maybe even do things like a predictive index assessment or a DISC assessment, really get a sense of like who they are and how they show up, because you can't teach that stuff. What you can teach is knowledge and skills. Okay. And as long as you've got your SOPs worked out, and again, just to come back to the SOPs, if you haven't done that before and you are at that crunch point of needing a resource, then do it with them. So as part of their training, literally walk them through things step by step and film it, and then get it transcribed and then give it to them and say, great, watch this. Here's the transcription. As you're watching it, build out the SOP. Nothing better for the adult brain than to watch, listen, and learn all at the same time, right? But coming back to recruitment, yeah, it's definitely hire for attitude, teach for skill. Now, does it mean that I also look for people with the skills that we need? Absolutely. But if I'm then down to, say, 3 candidates for the job, and we've got 3 that have awesome attitudes, awesome profiles, their values really aligned to what we're trying to do, their motivation really aligns to the job and what we're trying to do, then it comes down to, well, which one has the shortest ramp up time and the quickest uptake when it comes to their skills and what they know. So skills and experience always comes second.
And attitude, and when you take all of that together, you're forming a culture that is built to last,
Yeah.
right? And being able to address the issues as you go, talk about it, make the videos, and then save it in the bank for when others eventually come on board. And that way you're not having to reinvent this whole thing all over again.
You got it.
I see it in my business all the time. I'm ready to make more videos and have more training on what we're doing just so I don't have to do it again.
Yeah. But let's also just pause, and you just mentioned that word training, right? Training never stops. So even if you've onboarded someone, you've done the SOPs, you've done the training, when you have VAs or customer service people or whatever you choose to call them, weekly basis, you need to be doing training, feedback, and quality control, if not daily, right? So you do still end up as part of your role managing people and leading people. Now, I guess you got to ask yourself, if you're a business owner, are you also a natural leader? Because if you're not, maybe there's some skills that you need to go and build in order to build that team around you as well.
Have you had to have moments where you've had to look within and think about, like, how do you become a better leader in those moments?
Yeah, I have. I guess I'm lucky that my background is actually in human resources, organizational development, and leadership. So I kind of came with a pretty good toolkit around that stuff. But that doesn't make me perfect, right? No one is perfect. So every now and then I do need to stop and go, oh, am I leading this person in the way that's getting the best out of them? Because I'm doing it in the way that I know, but not everyone's the same, right? We're not all painted with the same brush. So sometimes you do need to pause and say, am I getting the best out of this person? And if not, the first thing you have to do is put the mirror up and go, well, what am I either doing or not doing that is or isn't getting the result? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, how that person delivers and what they deliver is through the guidance of what you're asking them to do. So yeah, sometimes you do have to pause, and I have had to pause and go, let's just reassess here. And it doesn't mean you need to change everything. It might just mean a little tweak over here, a little twist and turn over here, and we're back on track.
Yeah. And I don't know. I can tell you from my experience, I'm always reflecting on what we've discussed, what we've gone over. How did I handle it? How do we handle it better next time? Internally, externally, there has to be reflection on it.
Definitely.
And I can tell you, I'm sure there's people that don't even get into that. And I know that the best teams out there do that reflection. And that makes them better leaders because they're always thinking about how they can do better with what they're conveying with their message
Yeah.
and how they're showing that leadership to the others, right? Because
Yeah.
how you show that leadership to them is how they will show leadership to the others when others
Correct.
are hired on as
Yeah.
well.
Correct.
That's the culture. And
No,
so you
it
have to
is.
establish that.
Yeah, and it comes back to a principle that I like to lead by and live by, and that is that we teach people how to treat us. I'll say that again and let that sink in for a few people, right? We teach people how to treat us. So if we're always late for things, we're essentially teaching those people around us, you can be late for me. If we're delivering subpar work that needs, it's got mistakes all through it and someone needs to red pen it, we're teaching them that you can deliver that type of work to me. So really think about how you are showing up as a leader in your business and how you are subconsciously teaching people to work with you, because it's match and mirror all the time.
Right. I love it. It makes a lot of sense. And I think a lot of people should be paying attention to this just because when we are doing business every day, you have to perform better. You have to make your team better. And by doing that, that'll help you scale. That'll help you have a more well-oiled machine. It all will come together and it'll happen. I love it. Where are people going wrong with the inbound marketing channels? Like a lot of people can start it up. They can get it set up through Google, get it set up through a service provider like you, get the landing page. And it sounds great, right? But there's a lot more to it. So where do people go wrong with this?
Yeah, it's a great question, and honestly, sometimes it feels like everybody just finds their own unique path to screwing it up somehow, right? But this is important stuff, right? Because like your marketing dollars, that's what generates your revenue in your business, and there's definitely some common threads that we see across this. One of the things strategically that I'll speak to first, and let me define what I mean when I say strategic. Like I think a lot of times we talk about like, is it better to do A or to do B? When it comes to strategic things, those are usually things where it's like, well, sometimes you might want to do A and sometimes you might want to do B. And the real experience comes from knowing when to do each. And one of those things that's really, really hard in this industry that generally people just have a hard time with is location targeting. And I'll explain why it's so difficult. Because you just go work with like some marketing agency there. They've never done location targeting beyond just asking their client, hey, where do you want us to target? And then the person says, well, Florida. And then you target Florida, right? It's like that simple. Or like if you're an e-commerce business, you're just like, well, I don't know, the United States. And sure, we'll target the United States. It doesn't matter that much. In this industry, though, the location that you target is the product because you're going to buy that house. So it's so important and it's so nuanced. So there's just a few little things juggling in the air when it comes to location targeting with PPC that's just different from other channels. Like let's just say I really want to like nail direct mail in one zip code. I can do that. Nobody's stopping me from doing that. If I'm going to go run a PPC campaign in one zip code, I'm going to pay like $3,000 per lead, and it's not going to work. So like rule number one is that the wider you go in your locations, the cheaper your cost per lead will be. And that's not just because you're like targeting, like a lot of people think, well, yeah, if I do Orlando plus 20 miles, then I'm going to get, more expensive leads than Orlando plus 50 miles because they're more rural if it's plus 50 miles. But yes, that could be true, but it's also that like even targeting equally quality areas, if you target more of them, you get a cheaper cost because there's more inventory. And when inventory is really limited, it drives up cost. It's exactly how it works with PPC. Picture it like I'm going to an auction and there's going to be like 100 clicks sold that day at the auction. If like how much am I going to have to bid if I want 50 of those clicks versus if there's going to be like a million clicks sold at the auction and I still want 50 clicks, like do I have to be the competitive bidder? Not really. I can basically lowball Google in that kind of scenario. So that's the first relationship here, is that the wider we go geographically, the cheaper the cost per lead will get. Any questions about that before I talk about like where that will bite you in the butt?
Well, no, and I'm glad you brought this up because I didn't know about this until a couple months ago. When
Mhm.
you do the inbound marketing, like you pick Florida, thinking, oh yeah, you target all of Florida. You can get things in the Panhandle, the South Florida, and then I found out that you can like pick just one market. So if you really wanted to just move everything to like Tampa, you can just plump all your money right into the Tampa market. And I was amazed by that because I'm thinking, well, wait a second, like, you can just go straight there and avoid everything else that's around. But like you said, the cost just goes up because now you're just going in that one saturated market. I didn't know that the cost was going to go up like that, but that does make sense.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And it's true kind of all the time. Like people ask, like, well, when does that stop being true? Well, our clients that target 200 markets get cheaper leads than our clients that target 50 markets. Like it always gets cheaper as you go wider. So, but that doesn't mean that's always the right move. So because of that, you'll find people out there who just even target like the entire United States. And I've seen people fall on their face doing that because then they end up getting like all these leads in the middle of nowhere where they can't find a buyer and it's just not a quality property to deal with. Where you could, it's like ARV is 10 grand and it needs 20 grand worth of work. And that's just not a deal, even if you could get it for free. Like, so you have those kinds of situations, or you find a deal at like 50% of ARV and it's a smoking deal, but there's one buyer in the town and that person doesn't want it. Right.
Right.
So you run into issues with that kind of stuff. Right. So we have this fine balance of like going as wide as we can. It's kind of like, the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Like,
Yeah.
I know who I'm talking to here. So like I say the same thing with locations. Like you need the right locations, all of the right locations, none of the wrong locations, or nothing but the right locations. So what I mean by that is if you can target like all of Florida, yes, do it. But what you have to think is like, okay, I'm targeting all of Florida, but can I do deals in Georgia? Can I do deals in North Carolina? And if the answer is yes, then you're not targeting enough. But then at the same point, if you don't want to do a deal in the middle of nowhere, Palatka, Florida, then don't target it because you're going to get leads from there. Because what happens actually with PPC is your ad spend will naturally flow to the least competitive amongst the areas that you're targeting. And the reason that happens is because Google likes to optimize. Like you're going to tell Google, like I want as many leads as I could possibly get. And Google's going to say, okay, great. I found some of these areas here where nobody else wants the leads. So I can actually get them pretty cheap for you. I'll get you all the leads from that area, and then you'll get as many leads as possible, which is exactly what you wanted, right? So you run into those kinds of issues too. So that's why you have to make sure, again, you target the right locations, all of the right locations, none of the wrong locations. Because if you have, like people think like, oh, I targeted, 10 areas. Yeah, one of them is not good, but 9 of them are good. The risk you run is that 50% of your budget gets spent in the one that's not good because your competition is savvy enough to be avoiding that area. So it's this fine balance of like, we want to be as many places as we can. But if we have any holes in that bucket, we run the risk of like the little area with just a little bit of population wasting a lot of our budget. So you have to be really careful about how you do it. Does that make sense?
I didn't know that. I didn't know that that's what Google would do. That they would like
Mhm.
trade, like basically you're getting the leads from the least popular area. So all of a sudden you're getting all these leads, but you're like, why? Like, oh, I pumped all this money in. Like, what's this? And it's coming from not the areas that maybe you want, but from the areas that aren't populated enough. That's crazy. I didn't even realize that. This is valuable. I mean, I'm learning this right now. Um, so keep going because like, what other misconceptions are we missing out on with PVC? Like, because I feel like people just do it and then like they try it for 3 months, 4 months, and they get frustrated. They're like, I'm not getting anything. I'm not getting like, why is it not like I'm converting right? Do I not have the team set up? Are we not doing the right AdWords? Are we not pumping enough ad spend in this? There's a lot of frustrations that come with it. So like, what are some other things we're missing on, even though we've got it all set up? I'm 4 months in and I'm still not getting it right, right?
Yeah, totally. And there's, like I said, there's tons and tons of things. And one way that I could summarize one of them is that people focus too much on leads and not enough on deals. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So it's really common that people just think of PPC like it is a whole. Like you look at people's marketing metrics and they're just like, this is what PPC gave me. And they never go like deeper than that. They assume it's just like some pay per lead company where it's just like, you get what you get. You just pay for it because they just don't understand it. Right. That's the equivalent of like, I'm sending direct mail to 5 different lists and with 2 different postcards. And I don't even look at like which one's working for me. PPC goes deep. Like most of our clients have not just a few search terms, but thousands and thousands of search terms that are triggering their ads. And we most often have dozens and dozens of ads that are showing, and we have multiple versions of a landing page that are showing in response to those ads in all these different things, right? So like if you're doing PPC, right, you're doing a lot of testing and you don't want to look at it on a whole. You want to look at like what's working, because even if I look at a 10x return on an account, which a lot of people would say like this is a fantastic return, I still look at it. I'm like, there's got to be a way to make it 20x. You know, what in this account is performing at 20x? Let me focus on those things. So the overall concept here, though, is that we focus too much on leads, not enough on deals. This is like the common disconnect. So marketing agency doesn't know what's happening in the sales team, right? So marketing agency just says, well, the KPI that you have for us is that you want leads, so we're going to focus on what gets us leads. Sales team focuses on, I want these leads to turn into deals. Nobody focuses on which specific marketing activities drove which specific type of lead, which drove which specific type of deal. So there's this complete disconnect between sales and marketing. So, and it happens even beyond this. I'll explain like some basics of Google's algorithm and how it functions.
That's a lot of trial and error too. I mean, that could take a couple months before you really get that rhythm of what market is reacting to what marketing method, or maybe what landing page is sticking in a certain area, right? Like maybe the more professional landing page is really sticking with the South Florida area, but you know, some of the little graphics and pixelated kind of websites are sticking to the North Florida area. I don't know. It's like you have to like test it out and see what happens, and it's it can take a while, but you got to have the patience for it, of course. Let's make if we can, just an example itemized list of things that can be copyrighted versus things that can be trademarked.
Okay, so when you think of trademark, think about brand protection. When you think about copyright, think about protection for anything creative and written, or creative and filmed. Like, for example, Al, you and I are both authors on this podcast. It might be your podcast, but I'm helping you create it too. So we're both authors. We both have copyright rights in this podcast. It's a creative work. So any photographs that people take, for example, those are considered creative works. Those are subject to copyright. Your sales copy, okay? So if you have like some ad copy that you put out, maybe especially long form copy, things like that are subject to copyright. What else? Your blog, like maybe you have blog articles or creative things that you've written for your blog, that is capable of copyright protection. But short phrases and individual words are not covered by the copyright law. Why? Because they're considered insufficiently creative. Okay.
Interesting.
I know.
Well, like sounds and phrases and like logo designs and things that are recognizing your brand, those would be more on the trademark side, but the creative works is going to be the copyright side. I think that's very clear, right? Because a lot of people do muddy that water, and they'll put TM on something that is a creative. It's not working that way.
I mean, nice try, but not quite right.
Yeah, let's break down something on the trademark side first, and then we'll move to the copyright. So on the trademark side, how is one really protecting themselves on the sounds, the phrases, making sure that somebody's not going to come along later and either use it or implement it, or just come along and put the TM and then they're using it? Like how are people going to get protected? They came up with something, now they want to keep that.
Well, they need to register the trademark with the Patent and Trademark Office. And the reason why we register is because then your trademark is in the trademark database for other people to find and avoid. So that's one reason to register. The other reason to register is because now you've got this trademark certificate and it says, hey, this is my trademark, and here's the trademark, and here's the date that I registered it, and here's my date of first use. So there's a whole bunch of information on this trademark certificate that tells a whole bunch of things about your trademark, including the goods and services that the trademark applies to. So if somebody else is using your trademark, you can come and wave that in their nose, under their nose, in their face, and say, hey, listen, you are violating my trademark rights. Here's my registration. Please stop or I'll sue you, right? 9 times out of 10, actually more like 99 times out of 100, they'll go, oh my God, I don't want to get sued, so I will stop. But if you don't have a trademark registration, all you can say is a wimpy, hey, I was using that first. And you have to go through a whole bunch of rigmarole to prove that you were the first user, that you have better rights than the other guy, that you were actually using it as a trademark, the goods and services that you were using it with. It is a whole bunch of stuff that you would have to prove, or you can, just stop using the trademark, but you got the trademark in the first place, or you started using it, even if you didn't register it, because you liked it. You don't want to give it up, right? So if you like it and you want to enforce it and you want to stop other people from using it, then you want to be able to say, hey, this is my trademark. And that's what a trademark registration does.
It's very important, right? Protecting yourself. And something that you talked about with me too is like making sure you're very careful with plurals and singular when doing trademarks. Can you elaborate on that? Because I know you have a famous saying when it comes to doing those kinds of trademarks.
Yeah. Sometimes people come to me and they're like, Angela, I got this great idea for a trademark. There's somebody else who's using it, but I'm putting an S on the end. And I'm like, oh, no. We can't do that. If they have a trademark registration, you putting an S on the end for the same or similar goods and services, that's still an infringement. So please don't do that. Or sometimes they'll come to me and they'll say, Angela, so somebody else is using this trademark. It's like crazy, whatever, but I'm spelling it with a K. And I'm like, no. Crazy with a K is still crazy, right? So that's what I tell my clients. It's like, look, if it sounds the same, then it's the same. You can't just say, well, I'm spelling it with a K, or I put an S on the end, or mine has a dash. No. Those are all going to be considered the same. Why? Well, Al, because when we use trademarks, we hear them. We see them in print maybe sometimes. But we also hear them, right? Like, do you know the difference, Al, between crazy glue with a K and crazy glue with a C? It's still crazy, right? Like you can't tell. So those two marks would be considered the same. Spelled with a K, spelled with a C, crazy with a K is still crazy.
Yeah. And you have to be very careful with doing that. And people think that's creative, and maybe it looks that way, but it's not going to come across that way legally. But the really interesting thing that really piqued my interest when you were talking about going after shopping centers was the fact that you're going after ones with value add, right? The value add, the way that the lots are, so that the out parcels then can become other little structures too. And I remember seeing this in Miami, where there is a shopping center, and all of a sudden on the outskirts of the parking lot, there's a bank, then there's like a little coffee shop, then there's all these other things. And then you're talking about it with me, and I'm like, well, that makes a lot of sense, that those are great opportunities. What is the real, what's the grab with the value add shopping centers when you can do that?
Well, I'm looking for 2 value adds. The first one you mentioned, and that is developing outlots. So by developing outlots, all that simply means is that we have enough ground in front of the shopping center, between the center and the road, that we could carve off a chunk of that, or several chunks of it if it's enough, and we can do multiple things with it, right? We have 3 options. We could sell a little chunk of it. And currently we have one under contract right now at one of our shopping centers. And they are going to put a Dunkin' Donuts on it. Well, that's a great opportunity for us, first of all, because we got a nice chunk of money for a piece of pavement in front of our center that we do nothing with. It's literally free money for us. But more than that, it also drives traffic into our center for the rest of our tenants. And that adds value to the center. So while we're selling off a piece of it, we're actually adding value at the same time, which you would think, well, that's impossible to do, but it's not when you think that through. The other thing that we could do with it is we could ground lease it. We could chunk off that section, and instead of selling it for a Dunkin' Donut, we could tell the developers, hey, we'll lease that ground to you for so much a foot on a 50-year lease or a 100-year lease or whatever. And that obviously, again, adds value to our center because now we have additional cash flow and income for quite some time. And again, pulls in more traffic for the rest of our tenants. And then the third thing we could do is we could take that chunk of land and we could go ahead and develop it ourselves and do a build to suit for, let's say, that same Dunkin' Donut, right? Where we would build to suit. And then we would not only just lease them the ground, we would lease them the ground and the building that we have built to their specs on a long-term lease. All three are wins for us, and all three are wins for the rest of our tenants. So that's the first value add that I look for. The second value add I look for, most people would probably miss if they haven't been trained in this. We look for opportunities to rehab the leases. The leases, just the lease structure and how they're written, make up a huge percentage of the value of a property. And a lot of, particularly mom and pop owners, they don't know how to write leases. They're just using an old lease they've had for 30 years, and they don't want to, engage an attorney to do it properly. So they just wing it, and they make a mess of their leases, which is great for us because if they have good tenants in there that are doing good business, right, those tenants don't want to leave. So we come in and we structure a really strong lease, a really tight lease, and on a longer time frame. And we could literally add an enormous value, I mean, in the millions of dollars of value to that property simply by not even touching the physical asset itself, but rehabbing the paper in it. So that's the second value add that we look for.
That's different. I like that. That's something.
Well, as an attorney, I assumed you would like that, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy to think that somebody's going into a shopping center business and has a shoddy lease, right? But there's a lot of people that also don't know how to manage properties. And like you said, they don't know how to manage maybe it's hotels or office buildings. And so that's why there's always going to be buyers and sellers, because just because you have the capital to buy it doesn't mean you understand how to manage it or have the right people and experts to help you get into it. So that's huge. I love what you just touched on there. And we're going to go back to a couple points, but the difference between spending versus investing on marketing. What a mindset that is, because a lot of investors, realtors, people in our industry view it as money just flowing out of our pockets, right? But you're like, no, this is obviously going to be the long-term play. When did that really hit you as this is an investment versus spending?
Yeah, man. Honestly, it hit me when being around other high-level individuals in the masterminds that I'm a part of. And just hearing them talk how they operated their business. And actually, there was some good friends of mine that they're based out of Phoenix, Arizona. And I love the way that they ran their organization and their business. And I literally told them, man, if I could copy your model, I would greatly appreciate it. And they allowed me to, man. They're like, yo, sure, welcome. Come over here if you want, shadow us, do whatever you got to do. And I literally, copied their entire business model, their marketing models, everything. And they're the ones that kind of, taught me, hey, this is an investment. You're not spending money. Because at first, with the amount of money that we're spending, it could get a little scary, honestly, man. You have a couple bad months and you're not gonna end well. So it was a little bit of a mind shift change by being around other successful guys. Definitely helped for sure.
Yeah, and I can totally resonate with the idea of you're just shelling out money, because after a while you want the return on your investment. And when you're spending that money and nothing's coming, you're thinking, well, what are we doing here? However, it's that long-term play. How do we implement this long-term? And then eventually you get the return on that investment, but it takes a while.
And not only that, not only are you going to invest it, you got to make sure you have the right people to close those deals and bring them in. Because I've seen other guys, out there where, they're spending money, but their salespeople are no good. So they're literally burning their cash.
Yeah, and you're right about the marketing. You can do all this marketing, but you have to have those pieces in place to close the deal. And I love what you talked about, quality control and the feedback that you're trying to get from the people that you're reaching out to. I think I touched on that on a show about quality control with my team. Something that I had to sit everybody down and I had to say, we have to focus on the quality, making sure spelling, names, everything sent, asking people for things, being efficient, because when you do that in return, it's like, wait a second, the customer service experience is at another level. And the training behind this, how are you guys implementing training? Are you doing it like every week? Are you doing it every month, quarterly, having meetings? Are you kind of doing it on the spot? What's your method?
Yeah, so it really depends. I apologize. My dogs are barking over here. Somebody's knocking.
They love the question.
Yeah. So it depends on the department. Our salespeople we're training once a week. We also have a sales director, which they pretty much do daily huddles in the morning. They go over, hey, what happened yesterday on your appointments? Let's get you ready for today. They're role playing. All my sales team is together on the phone calls. And everybody else, we're just always touching up on our meetings. I'm like, me as a leader, hey, anything that we could get better at. What happened last week that maybe we could work on, that we could make changes to and pivot. And another thing that you had mentioned when, I don't want to change the topic, but you had mentioned, what do we look for when we're hiring? Also, when we got the predictive index, another thing that's important to me as a leader, more than skills, is to hire for their attitude. Are they positive individuals? And I look for something that we call culture enhancers. Culture enhancers is something I feel I created, and it's somebody that brings joy, positive energy, motivates the entire team. And I have a handful of those in my office. Actually, I think you might have met one of them. Her name is Laura.
Yes.
She is what I consider a culture enhancer. And man, the vibe, the energy in the office is amazing when you have these type of people around.
I love that, culture enhancers. Like, that's a game changer when it comes to hiring. The attitude, it's I think I just got lucky, fortunate with my team, and the fact that they're problem solvers and they approach each issue that comes in about, okay, it's not a negative. It's okay, how do we overcome it, right? And having that positive mindset, and like you said, the energy level of that room is got to be everybody on the same page, a collective together toward a whole goal, which is great. The attitudes, it's fantastic. Bobby, let me ask you this too. Motivating team members, because when your acquisitions is on the phone all the time and the TCs are following up like crazy and the sellers are not responding, or they're just giving a hard time, and maybe the team can't close the deal. What are you doing yourself as the leader when your higher ups need that kind of motivation to keep the ball going?
Man, so I more than anything, I talk to them. Hey, what's going on? Let's get these things off your chest. What can I help you out with? For example, for me, that's my superpower, solving problems. So maybe they're down because maybe they can't figure something out. Maybe they're in a slump. So, I just talk to them and let them know, hey, it's okay. We're going to get through this. I've been doing this for a long time. What you're going through is nothing new. And I just remind them that we're here for them, and they have a whole team behind them, and that everything's going to be all right. So definitely, and not only that, I do a lot of special things for my team, aside from motivation. We focus on having an amazing culture. So people love working in our office. For example, on birthdays, we're always taking individuals out for lunch. We do a nice quarterly dinner, like at nice restaurants on a quarterly basis, and we give out trophies to our our top performers. So we just try to make our office fun, so that way their attitude is always good. We try to limit that negative attitude outside the office.
I love that, because I did see on Instagram that you guys did go out for someone's birthday, and I'm thinking, wow, what a boss. Like, this is that person probably feels so appreciated. And then I saw the holiday post that you guys did. I mean, it was a whole thing. It was, and everybody got around, it had dinner, table, it was like a special event. It seemed like not just a dinner, it was an experience that you're providing them, and you're showing them, saying, hey, like, this is what it is to be a part of this team, right? That's the name of the game. And I love what you said, quarterly dinners. Is the idea behind doing the quarterly dinners just to bring the camaraderie together, to bring the morale up, to show the appreciation? Do you ever show the team like on PowerPoint and say, this is what we did last quarter, this is the vision, this is what we're doing next, let's eat?
Yeah, so mainly those type of dinners are for camaraderie. I don't really want to talk too much business in those dinners. And again, I apologize for my dog. Yeah, no, it's mainly for, hey, let's come together, let's have a good meal, let's drink some good wine, and let's enjoy each other's company. And mainly me thanking them for everything that they do, and it's just a way for me to pay back. But for example, we do have meetings on a weekly basis, monthly basis, where we do definitely go over our goals, our metrics. This happened last week, this is what we expect to happen this week. But yeah, that dinner is mainly, it's more hey, straight business. We have an award ceremony where we give out awards to our top performers, maybe our MVP, somebody that stood out, maybe somebody that did something special for a seller that maybe left a lasting impression. We recognize those type of people. And
that's really special.
Yeah.
That's a different way to do things. And I don't think many people focus on that, right? Because everybody in their business is like every day, grind. And then eventually at the end of the year, they do something, but not every quarter. And that's something with my team that we talked about more, like, eventually in August, we'll all probably meet up at some point and do something, just because it doesn't have to be at the end of the year. Like, it shows appreciation for them. And when you're a virtual office, it's really hard to have those kind of meetings when everybody's spread out. So coordinating that is big. As your business grows, we have to find that identity, so we can work through the pain lines, the 3s and 10s. I'd love for you to expand on this, because we got to go deep into this,
dude. So I'm going to take us way deep, and Al, stop me, because I'll keep going. Like, interrupt me. Feel free to interrupt me. You won't hurt my feelings at all. So let me take everyone back to 2012. Okay, so 2012, I was 3 businesses in, and by businesses, I'll use businesses loosely for maybe one of them. I started something, sold some product, and realized I didn't want to do it, but by that time, I had a number of properties in the real estate side, all owner finance, not building any real cash flow, right? I was asset rich, cash flow poor, because all the money was going in for just for reserves. But I had an online company. And that online company, I had an amazing business partner who name is Patrick Riddle, such a good friend of mine still today. He and I started a company together in 2008. And we built that company to, it was about $500,000 a year, pretty darn good. For us and my standards at that time as well. And that was like a dream of mine, to make a couple $100,000 a year, right? So if we're bringing in 500, take out, it was a very high margin business, split it, we're both making, $150,000, $200,000 a year, doing great in our mid 20s. So here's the problem that came up, Al, was I remember vividly, this is about 2010. We had our first child, McKinley, our daughter, she's 13 now, in 2010. And I remember laying in bed, like looking at the ceilings. My wife had gone to work. She had taken our daughter to the daycare, to the nanny. And I was supposed to be working that day, right? So the reason that our daughter did not stay with me at home, with the guy who worked at home, is because I was supposed to be working, right? I'm doing a job. I've got important things to do, running this online company and having these properties. And I remember I was laying in bed till 10:30, 11 o'clock in that morning. It's like going back to sleep and going back and sleep. And I'm like, I wasn't excited to do the work that I had set out in my own business that day. And I remember watching a Steve Jobs commencement address a number of years ago where he said this quote. He said, if you wake up in the morning and look in the mirror, he goes, ask this question. He said, am I excited to do what I'm about to do today? And if your answer for too many days in a row is no, he goes, then you need to change something. And I was at that spot, Al, where I was like, I was not excited about my work for way too many days in a row. And it was weird, right? Because when we start our businesses, and we look for what I call freedom and impact. Like that's at the center of my entrepreneur freedom formula. And I'll bring this up here in a second. But at that time, I'm sitting there going, how the heck did I build a business that was supposed to set me free? And it actually feels like I'm trapped. Like I feel like I have less options in my business than I would if I went to get a job. And so I would start to think and second guess, well, maybe I should go get a job. Maybe that'd be a little bit easier. I wouldn't have to think about all these things. And so what I did during that time instead was I challenged myself. I said, well, let me figure out, is this just me, or is it just me? I haven't figured out how to make this work. Is the entrepreneur dream fake? And maybe it's not actually real, that you can actually live your dream as an entrepreneur, and you're just going to have to work your butt off all the time. You're going to be trapped by your business. You're going to be working for your business forever. Or is there someone out there who's solved this and they did figure out how to make this entrepreneur dream work? And I chose that option. I said, there's no way this can be fake. There's no way the entrepreneur dream is not real. And so I started looking for examples, right? I'm looking for examples of people, and I found guys like Richard Branson. I found other people that I went, I don't know, it kind of seems like they're kind of loving life in general, and they've been able to make it work as a business owner. So that's the first lesson now that I'll kind of toss out there that's related to identity. We're going to step into identity hard. Is I first had to get out of my own limiting beliefs and the situation I felt trapped in, and say, let me look for examples of people. Maybe they're not my peers yet. And what are the traits they're exhibiting? How are they showing up? What are they doing in their business? What are they doing in their life? And someone a little bit closer to me that I could actually reach out to at that time, this would have been 2012 then, name is Greg Clement, good friend of mine today. He started a mastermind that year. I'd never been a part of a mastermind, never forked down the money to pay for a real mastermind. I'd kind of gathered up some of my buddies over the years. We had some phone calls and we'd share ideas, but not like plunking down 20 grand for a mastermind. And I wouldn't say that I was just flush to be putting 20 grand out to be able to join this mastermind. But he started this mastermind called the 7 Mastermind. It was the one and only year that it ever happened now. Never. He did it for that 1 year, shut it down. It's never happened since. And the reason I joined that mastermind was because I knew that in that moment of where I didn't know that I hit a pain line. I didn't know what pain lines were. I didn't know that pain lines existed in business. I was between the $300,000 and $1 million pain line, and I had no clue how to grow through that pain line. And I'm going to define all these pain lines for you here in a second.
Yeah, I was just about to say, like, let's define what a pain line even is.
Let's do it, man. So there's something that I learned over the years. I was actually in the office with Clayton Mask, the CEO of Infusionsoft, about a month and a half ago. And he wrote a book called Conquer the Chaos many, many years ago. And that was the first time that I'd ever heard of the growth levels of things break at 3s and 10s. Okay. So in your business, things are going to break at 3s and 10s. They're going to break at 100,000, 300,000, million, 3 million, 10 million, 30 million and above, right? When I read that, I didn't have any context to what the heck that meant, because I had never even made it really through many of those pain lines to see the trend. So I probably ignored it completely when I read that originally. It came back to me again later, around 2012, 2013, about these 3s and 10s. And I started to dive into that. So when you hit that 3 or 10, things get hard operationally. Okay, communication structure gets harder in your business. If you're at 300,000, you probably have a person or two doing some work for you now. Even if it's just an executive assistant or a VA, we now have to learn how to communicate differently. Processes break at 3s and 10s. Some of the 3s and 10s, your revenue model starts to break, and you get stretched, have to go try to figure it out. And essentially, you can't scale back. You can't scale past $300,000 and stay there if you don't know how to delegate. Right. So you have to be able to delegate effectively the tasks that drain your energy, that run the business and or drive the business forward. At $1 million to 3 million, you're kind of more delegating rather than tasks from 300,000 to $1 million. You got to delegate tasks. You have to step into being a performer, right? 300,000 to a million, you delegate everything that drains your energy and doesn't make money, and you step into the things you perform the best at. Maybe you're amazing at sales or acquisitions or marketing. You just master the heck out of that at 300,000 to a million. You're going to get to a million as long as you delegate the things that drain your energy and lead you away from the revenue. Once you hit the million, though, you need to start to delegate things differently. You're going to be delegating projects now. So you're probably going to have a small staff at a million. You might need to have your first manager in place, and that manager is probably leading a couple people, maybe a few sales reps or a few support reps or something like that. And you need to get way better at outlining outcomes for a project and trusting a person to go deliver the project and bring it back. At 3 million to 10 million, where things start to break is around leadership, right? So 3 million to 10 million, you now, and this applies for most businesses, 3 million to 10 million, you now have to step into being a leader. And I'll show the whole growth levels and every identity change you have to make, every change you have to make on strategy, on marketing, on vision, on purpose. It's all going to be in this at every level.
Yeah. And Trevor, let me add in on this is like,
Yep.
every time I hear this level up, whether it's finding the assistants and delegating, whether now you need project managers, now you need to find a different leadership level.
Yep.
The thing that comes to my mind is it really comes down to the hires that you're making and being able to envision what person am I looking for? What traits am I looking for? Attitude, qualities, experience level, because as you go higher, you tell me, I would say that you'd have to have even a higher experienced person to be in that role. Juan, you were telling me about this crazy story of this fix and flip from a year ago, this Habitat for Humanity situation. Let's hear this crazy story, because we always love wild stories on the Al Nicoletti Show.
Yeah. No, this is a crazy / funny / like learning curve, and thank God we had the knowledge we had for this deal. So, I'm doing my calls one day, and I come across a pre-foreclosure. It's in Castleberry, Central Florida. And I speak to the guy, and the guy tells me, "Oh, this is my brother's property. Parents passed away, and I already went through probate." I was like, "Okay, cool." So I was like, "Let me get your brother's phone number." So I start calling the brother. So I speak to him a little bit, and he ghosts me. So he stops picking up my calls for like a few weeks. So one day I'm like, man, I really want to try to get a deal. I want this deal. Let me call him off another number, right? So I call him off another number, and boom, I catch him. He picks up the phone, right? Like, I knew it. This guy was ghosting me. So I'm like, "Hey, man, what's going on, man? Like, you want to sell it or not? Like, you're in pre-foreclosure. Unfortunately, you told me already you can't catch up the payments. And before the bank goes to auction and you end up losing even more, like, let's figure out a deal." So boom, he says, "All right, that's fine. Let's figure out a deal." So we get him under contract. So then once we get him under contract, I felt so bad, bro, because the guy's telling me, "Man, I hope we can close on this quick, because I was trying to sell this before, but the property was given to my parents through Habitat Humanity." And I was like, "Okay, what does that mean?" He's like, "That nonprofit that gives away houses?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I remember like seeing commercials, And according to what other investors have told me in the past, you can't sell it for a profit because of Habitat Humanity. So I was like,
there's technically a first right of refusal that Habitat of Humanity has on whether, if you want to sell the property, they have the first right of refusal to buy it. And if you have a wholesale price on it, they have the first right to refuse to buy it at that price.
Yeah. Ooh. So we learned that. We learned that through the deal, So I was like, "Hey, man, whatever hurdles we come through, don't worry about it. We got this, right? We'll give it the best shot we got, right?" That's what I told him. I was like, "If anybody can get this done, it's us, man. We'll give it the best shot." So the guy's like, "All right, man, I trust you." So cool. So we get him under contract. The guy texts me that same day, "Man, I really hope this goes through." I'm like, I told you I got you." He's like, "I don't even have money to eat today." I'm like, "Man, you don't have money to eat?" I told Jimmy. He didn't even know this. I don't know if I even told Jimmy. So I'm like, "Hey, man, what's your cash out, bro?" I cashed out with my $100. I'm like, "Man, everybody should eat, man." It was Easter weekend as well. So I'm like, "Man, get you some good food, man. Like, on the house. Cool." So
Get
then,
your 2 liter.
yeah. It's funny. Jimmy says 2 liters. So then the next week rolls around, and I'm like, hey, by the way, my partner's gonna swing by, just to check on the condition of the property. He told me the condition over the phone. We just want to verify everything is good. He's like, no. Man, the condition I told you over the phone is the condition it is. Like, we're good. You guys don't have to come by to look at it. So I'm like, whoa, red flag. Like, what do you mean? Like, nobody makes a decision for hundreds of thousands of dollars without looking at the house, So I tell him, I'm like, hey, man, I'm telling you right now, if we can't go look at the house, like, deal's off the table. Like, 100%. Nobody, whether it's me or anybody, nobody's going to buy this thing without looking at it. And he's like, well, I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm like, go for it. The reason why I don't want nobody coming to my house is because I don't have any running water. I'm like, okay, what does that mean? Running water? So I'm like, all right, we're not there to use the bathroom. We just want to check, He's like, well, the truth is I pee inside 2-liter bottles and I have them stored in the house. So I'm like, man, this guy is like, nah, I don't believe it. So I'm like, but I didn't make him feel bad about it, right? I'm like, listen, dude, you're telling me you're peeing 2-liter bottles and you have a couple stashed around the house. We don't care. We just want to go make sure that the property is like, it is what it is, as far as the condition. Like, I said, you know what? On top of that, when we do close on this thing, you can leave all the piss bottles in there. We don't care. Like, we'll have our crew like take care of it. But I'm legit thinking like, there's no way, like, I don't know, something's not adding up. But anyway, I called Jimmy up because I live here in Jersey, so Jimmy.
Any local brunt and headaches, this guy.
If you guys are looking for a partner, man, just have him be in the state in you guys' markets.
Love it.
So I said, Jimmy, this guy said there's a couple piss bottles in there. I don't even know what that means, but go check it out. Jimmy sends me a picture a few hours later. This guy, I don't know, he was like collecting these things, man. This guy had how many piss bottles, Jimmy?
Probably over 100. And my biggest baffleness is like, why weren't you emptying it in the bag? Like, I get it. You're using it temporarily. Go empty it. No, he will like seal it up and put it in the corner. Like, he'll just keep adding to them. I'm like, what's going on here? I know you got trash. Trash doesn't stop. So I don't know. He had a bunch of them throughout the whole house.
And this is a real deal.
Yeah, it's a super real deal. Yeah. So then I'm like, hey, man, what's going on with the water? Like, why isn't the water running? He's like, well, like I told you, I lost my job. I don't have any income. And I couldn't afford the water bill. I'm like, man, how much is the water bill, bro? He's like, I don't know. I'm like, give me your water account. He gives me the water account. I call him up. It was only like a few $100. I'm like, Jimmy, let's pay this guy's water, man. Like, everybody should have running water, man. Come on, So we pay for his running water, and he gets his water turned back on. He's super happy. He's calling me saying, man, I appreciate you. Man, you guys done more for me than anybody has done in the last couple of years. Like, thank you. I'm like, hey, man, no problem. So then he hits me up a few weeks later. We're still waiting for things to come back. And he's like, hey, I need another $100. I'm like, whoa, slow down. Like, this is not how this works, man. Like, I hooked you up the first couple times, but like closing should be coming soon. Don't worry. And the cool thing about it, he had a bunch of equity in the house. I think he had like $100K, if I remember correctly. He had like $100,000 in equity. So if this thing were to go through, he's going to get $100,000, And finally, like, our title person was so awesome, went through leaps and bounds, trying to figure out this Habitat Humanity thing. We're calling Habitat Humanity, trying to find out what's really going on. And finally, after like a month, Habitat Humanity says, you guys are good to sell. Like, we don't want the house. So we're like, yes. So I call him. I have the best news for you. Habitat Humanity said you can sell it to us. They don't want their first right of refusal, right? So that was like one of the biggest hurdles in the whole deal. And as soon as I told him that, he says, oh man, that is so awesome. My buddy, that's a local realtor, just advised me that I'm selling this house way below market to you guys. And I no longer want to sell it to you guys. I'm just going to list it with him.
Oh, I bet Jimmy's wheels are really turning then. He's like, no, I visited that house. We're getting it.
Well, Jimmy's the calm one out of the two, right? I'm the what? Are you crazy? Even though I'm not even in the piss infested house. I was more pissed than Jimmy. And I'm like, no way. So I call him back, and he just starts forwarding all my calls, all of them. So the cool thing about how we send our contracts out is, Jimmy being the nerd he is with all the software stuff, is whenever our contracts get open, we can see that in live time. We get an email notification, contract has just been opened. And if you forward that contract to somebody else to open it, it shows us the email address that got forwarded to and who opened it. So literally after that he got off the phone with me, I see blah, 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 blah at gmail.com opening the contract. So it was like the guy's first and last name. So I Googled it and I put realtor at the end and I put Orlando and boom, he came right up. So I'm like, oh, so this is the guy that's trying to like destroy our deal right now, So I'm like, cool. So I call up Gio, right? Gio's like our right-hand man. Gio is like awesome. We call him transaction coordinator, but he does everything for us.
Gio, shout out.
Awesome. Yeah, I love Gio. He's probably watching now. But anyways, I called Gio, and I'm like, Gio, did you file a memorandum on this? He's like, absolutely. As soon as we signed the contract. So I'm like, yes. So I called the buddy up. He's like, hey, Realty at your service. How can I help you? I'm like, hey, man, you're like trying to steal my deal, bro. Like, who's this? I'm like, blah, 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 street. You're trying to steal my deal. Oh, that's my client and a friend of mine, and I have to protect my clients. Don't call me back. Click. So I'm like, all right, cool. I'll call them right back. I said, listen, I'm just letting you know right now, as much as you want to destroy the deal, have fun. We have a memorandum of contract on this thing. And as soon as you try to go sell it behind our back, we're going to block the deal. And it's going to be a pretty penny for us to lift our memo. So have fun. And all I saw for like the next 20 minutes was our contract reopening in the email. He was just opening. And in our contract, it says we have the ability and the rights to file a memorandum. So he calls me like a week later. When's closing? I'm like, gotcha. Like you thought you were going to catch us, but we got you, I'm like, well, what happened with your buddy? I don't want to talk about that. I'm like, all right, cool. Closing is this day.
They thought they also were gonna get out by the closing date, but the way we write our closing dates, it says on or around XYZ date.
That's a big nugget. That's a big
So
nugget.
it's not just that date. It's like, all right. And within there's another term that says if it's no fault of the buyer, the contract auto extends weekly. It ain't our fault. So our contracts last for eternity until you want to sell the property.
Unless it's our fault that we're not closing.
It's our fault. That's different.
Look at that little strategy.
That's helped us a lot too, right? Originally, the reason why we put that there was like, how probates are out, obviously, right? You're the probate wizard. As much as we want to get the probates done in like super timely fashion, at the end of the day, you do your job correctly, and then it's pretty much on the court.
Right.
It's on the basketball court of the courts, right?
Right.
It's out of your control at that moment, right? So what used to happen when we were like still newbies is all the time, like we think that probate would be done in 3-4 months or, a couple weeks, and it doesn't, right? Especially in Volusia County, like you always tell me, like they're so backed up, right? So then the title companies will always have to tell us, hey, we need an addendum. Hey, we need an addendum for closing. Hey, we need an addendum for closing. We need an addendum for closing. So we're like, man, like we hate sending these addendums out. Like sometimes it's hard enough to get these people to sign the original contract. Now we're chasing them down for addendums,
Right.
So Jimmy came up with this bright idea. I'm pretty sure it was between Jimmy and Gio because Gio is like a contract wizard. They put that auto extension in there, and then the auto extension helped us out too, right? So we don't have to get these addendums. And then if they try to ghost us like this guy does, it just keeps auto extending, And then the on and around, a title company told us that. Title company's like, why don't you just put on and around? Around is like forever. Like what's around?
That was Matt Larson.
That was Matt Larson? Okay. So yeah, on or around, right? Around for me is 2 weeks. Around for you might be 2 years. So yeah, that's a cool nugget to share with the audience there.
That just helped us on a deal that we're doing right now that probate went through for like 8 months, and title didn't even ask for an extension. Our hard money lender asked for an extension, and I was like, hey guys, I took a screenshot, I highlighted it. I'm like, we don't need an extension. It already auto extends, and they haven't asked for nothing since. They're already clear to close and everything. So it's not just title the ones that can give you grief. It's your lender as well.
Yeah. So So yeah, so that guy, he pretty much, he was trying to jerk us out of the deal, you know. Obviously, we're investors, obviously, and we know, super transparent from the beginning. We're gonna buy your house, we're gonna fully renovate it, we're gonna put it back on the market, and we're gonna make a profit, you know. But at the same breath, you're making $100,000, dude, you know. But you know, everybody's nice until it comes down to money. Like, that's what this industry really is, right? And that's why you have to protect yourself with contracts. So the guy, you know, he pretty much had to eat his own words, and yeah, he went to closing, signed, got his $100,000 check. So he was super happy. So we were able to help him, even though he tried to not help himself with us. And then yeah, we were able to fix and flip that property. You know, it was a really cool fix and flip, and
then we made like 50 grand on that one.
We made like 50,000 on that deal, so we were happy. You know,
look at that.
So
yeah, and it's just it's going through these headaches, right? Like Juan, you talked about, it's just like it's figuring out the headaches of the deal, but as long as you commit and try, it's taking that action and following through with it. It's going to happen. It's just you got to get through these little bumps in the road.